education, data-driven district. The Wichita Public Schools administers formative and summative assessments to identify academic and behavior needs. Ongoing professional learning and implementation of curriculum and courses are determined from the analysis of student and classroom data. This evening's presentation will provide an overview of the types of data collected in the district that drive all academic decisions. This presentation is for the board's information.
Welcome, Dr. Irving. We're glad to see you.
Thank you. Good evening, President Morgan, Vice President Rhodey, other board members, and Dr. Thompson. So as Dr. Mike read in the description, the purpose of tonight's presentation is to describe the types of assessment that are administered to our students. The data from these assessments are analyzed by teachers and building and district administrators in order to make sure that we are using data to drive our curriculum selections, courses assigned to our students, professional development, and other supports as needed for staff. So to talk a little bit about formative assessment, they are low-stakes assessments, and really they are the most important type of data that assist us in identifying students' instructional needs. They occur continually throughout the learning process. Teachers are then able to use the data collected from formative assessments to make immediate decisions about the follow-up instruction that's needed to deepen a student's understanding. So our formative assessments actually provide our teachers this important information that influences their teaching, including what adjustments might need to be made in a lesson or other type of reteaching that may need to occur. So quick assessments that are commonly seen in our classrooms include strategies like thumbs up, thumbs down. Really simple, a teacher could say, thumbs up if you believe this is correct, thumbs down if not. That is a quick way of assessing a student's learning. Another type of strategy is called closing the loop. This is a reflective strategy to allow students to talk about what they understand about the lesson and what questions they still have. So these are quick ways that a teacher can identify what students understand and then use that information to determine next steps for instruction, either with the entire class or for individual students. Then we have summative assessments. These type of assessments most often are standardized assessments. The goal of a summative assessment is to evaluate students' cumulative learning at the end of an instructional unit or perhaps at a certain period of time, comparing it to benchmark or some other type of standard. Summative assessments are high stakes, often high stakes assessments, which means they have a very high point value. Examples of a summative assessment is our standardized assessments like our Kansas State assessment that our students take. Another example are those type of assessments that are administered by testing groups, such like ACT and SAT. We also see summative assessments at the end of units or midterms or perhaps at the end of a semester. So the data from summative assessments often informs us about programs, but they don't necessarily provide us that individual student data so that we can use it to identify individual student strengths and areas of need. So for teachers, they may use summative data to determine something they might need to change in their teaching for a particular chapter, for example. For administrators, this data could be used to clarify which programs, if any, that we might need to tweak or maybe even remove. Just like one grade does not determine that a student is proficient, we also shouldn't rely on one assessment to make those decisions either. As educators, we do use summative assessments like the Kansas State assessment, but we use that along with other type of assessments and other data types in order to make program decisions, curriculum decisions, or other type of instructional decisions. There are those ongoing assessments that I just described that occur in our classrooms that teachers use daily to identify individual students' needs and for planning purposes for their grade level as well as for their content area. But in addition to those classroom assessments, There is also the assessment protocol, which outlines all of the district-wide assessments which are required in Wichita Public Schools for all levels. And I think you might have a copy of this, but this outlines, really this is our assessment guide. It provides that outline of what each of our students are being assessed on, that we are then using that data to collect to determine at the district level, make some decisions, as well as at the classroom level. Those decisions then help us, or that data begins to help us identify the professional learning that's needed, instructional needs for individual students. Some of our curriculum also has built-in assessments in order to monitor how students are performing according to the standards and skills they are working on within the program. And so here is a couple of screenshots of Lexia Core 5 and Dreambox Learning, which are two types of personalized learning that we have in the district. This means both of these curricular programs assess the instructional level of our students, and then it individualizes the lessons so each student can work at their individual level on the skills and standards that have been identified for them. Teachers then have access to the immediate data to monitor how our students are progressing to master those individual skills. This is a couple of screenshots on Reading Plus and iReady. These two programs provide our middle school educators immediate data to monitor students' progress and be able to adjust their instruction so that those students also can master the standards which they are also working on individually. So, throughout this year, we will be providing updates on the progress of accomplishing our 4 long-term goals. Baseline data either has been identified or will be identified throughout this year. We will share with you the status of the formative and the summative data that has been identified to monitor each of those long-term goals. We know there's a need for both types because they serve different purposes. Formative helps us assess forward learning. It occurs ongoing throughout the learning process to help us monitor and make instructional decisions and adjustments in our lessons as needed. Summative are an assessment of the learning. That is, they are cumulative and they assess students' memory of content and skills learned over time. So, this slide actually shows a few examples of some of the formative as well as the summative assessments that are administered here in our district. So to review, advanced placement taken in May after all course instruction is provided. This is an example of summative. The assessment is at the end of a program, and its intention is to assess the outcome of students' learning. Statements like "I notice" and "I wonder" on course content. Teachers can see what students know and what they need to learn. This is an example of formative. It's going to tell the teacher where students are at in the learning process so adjustments can be made in instruction. NAEP, given to randomly selected 4th and 8th grade students, results are reported at the state level. This is an example of summative data. It is cumulative, an assessment where the focus is on the outcome. And then instructional closing. Takes about 7 minutes of class time for students to respond, to reflect on questions, to check for understanding. Can you guess what it is? Formative. And so the teacher will be able to use this information to determine what needs to be retaught to which standards. Again, 2 different types of assessments, formative and summative, and both of these are important types of data that we do collect within the district that we will be sharing with you specifically what those different types are as we continue to come back before you to share updates on our status of accomplishing the outcomes of our 4 long-term goals. Questions or comments that you might have?
Yes, we do have some. Ernestine?
For these 2 that you used as examples of some formative ones, the online programs, are those being tested at certain specific schools, or is it available for all teachers to use?
So those online programs, any student who is accessing those programs as part of their instruction.
Okay. Does a student have an opportunity to demonstrate mastery other than with the online program? Could they demonstrate it orally or on paper with the teacher as the teacher's?
Most definitely, and that's because no particular assessment should be the only assessment that we're using that data to determine what a student's instructional needs are. So that is one data type that our teachers have access to.
Thank you.
Ron?
For the standards reference grading, is any one of these going to be used more or less, or is it going to be about the same, a balance of those, or?
And so also with our standards reference grading, what we have stated is a body of evidence, meaning that, again, not one particular data point, but the body of evidence, multiple types of things that are going to show a teacher if a student has mastered that particular standard.
Okay, thank you.
Stan?
I just had a quick question. When we use the phrase data-driven, are we talking about data-driven at the classroom level, or are we talking about data-driven at the administration level, or both?
We're talking up, top to bottom, bottom to top.
Okay.
And so there are definitely types of data that a classroom teacher is looking at on a daily basis. And most often, that's going to be that formative, because it is that data that's going to guide what adjustments I need to make in my planning, or even what adjustments right now, because it's obvious that my students aren't quite understanding this particular piece that is occurring. But even beyond that, during our professional learning time, during our team times, during in-services, our school staff are immersed in data. They're looking at data to make decisions regarding what curriculum students should access, what courses we should be supporting students in, what additional instruction students should be receiving. So that's occurring all the time at the building level. But then also at the district level, we have what we call data dives or data learning communities, and those are occurring because we're looking at data not only at the school level, but district-wide. But we will drill down at the district level at a building, to a classroom, to individual students, and so that we are then better prepared to have conversations to dig deeper to identify that students' individual needs are being met as we're in the building supporting building leaders and their staff.
And I just wanted to make sure it was at our level as well, because I think one of our jobs is to make sure that Dr. Thompson feels comfortable coming to the board and saying, here's what the data is saying on the big picture of the overall, here's what the trend is, and here's what we really need to dive into and start working on. And my understanding is that's what this is going to help do.
Definitely. So another example of where that occurs is when we've come before you to talk about curriculum needs. It's because we have spent an immense amount of time looking at data to identify, again, those program needs where we're not, where we have those gaps and holes and we need to look at other things. So we're looking at data all the time, all levels.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that a little bit, the data that you gave to us, much of it is available to everybody in the district. Some, for example, NAEP, that's a random sample, it's done by the state. We don't even get district level scores back on that, do we?
We have access to view that data.
Okay, but it's basically compiled by the state. It's a
Yes.
national test that runs
Yes.
across the country, right?
Yes.
Okay, the reports that we're getting back, to follow up on what Stan just asked, will we get reports, for example, district-level reports on where we started with Fastbridge and where we are at the end of the semester, or wherever you decide to put that in. Is that the kind of reports that we're going to be getting?
Yes, so we have identified baseline data where our students are at right now. And so we're considering that where we're starting, and then we have identified what are those incremental goals that we want to be able to accomplish each year. So at the end of the 5 years, that we have hit our end target. And so when we come back before you, we will be sharing, this is the baseline data, this is the things that are occurring, and this is where we expect to be by the end of the year.
Okay, but you will be bringing it back before the end of the year in chunks?
Yes,
Okay, that was my question. But that's the district-level data. The buildings actually get their own data that they can work from, so that they can identify not only second grade, but Mary Smith and John Jones and whatever in second grade needs a little bit of extra help in a particular area.
yes, most definitely. And so what our building staff, as well as our district staff, have access to is a dashboard. And that dashboard, they're able to access daily, and it has data for a classroom teacher to be able to observe how individual students are performing related to these district-wide assessments, as well as an administrator is also able to access the building overall, individual teacher, and individual student.
Okay, and as a board, can we get to the dashboard with district-level reports on the dashboard?
I'm not quite for sure what that looks like, but I can follow back up with you with how you access either the dashboard, or definitely we can provide any of those requests to you, but I'll have to check on the
Okay,
dashboard piece.
I know as we were building the dashboard, we were working on the school level first, which is where we should have been.
Yes,
But will that eventually move up to the district level, so that as a board member, any one of us could go in and look for the district, how
Yes.
they're doing?
and so we do have district-wide data on the dashboard currently that our district-level staff are accessing as well.
Okay, thank you. Ben?
Yes, so looking at this, it appears to me like we have, because the data is going to be based on the summative assessments generally, the data that we're collecting. Would you say that we have more formal summative assessments on our students of higher need? Or would you say that we're giving assessments across the district regardless of educational need?
That would be across the district, regardless of where a student is entering each year. For example, the Fastbridge Screener is data that is collected for our primary grades in elementary. It provides us information on how students are at that point in time related to foundational literacy and numeracy skills, and that is administered to all of our primary elementary students, as well as middle school, and then some selected students within high school. And so that's one example that it's not targeted because a student is at a certain level. It is valuable data for us as educators to identify, again, what skills students are at a particular moment, and be able to provide instruction to be able to support them at all ends of the spectrum.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm seeing no more comments. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to your next reports. Thank you.
Thank you.